The bass is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It is a Thursday. It is March 5th. We are taking your Thursday thoughts on Twitter at Soccer Down here. Share them with us. Join the conversation this morning. There's lots of different things to talk about today. We've got some scheduling things, as maybe MLS realizes that a super long offseason is a bad idea. We've got the SheBelieves Cup kicking off tonight. U.S.-England, a rematch of the World Cup semifinal between those two. And, new face leading the U.S. women's national team. A few new faces on the field. We'll get into all of that this morning. USL Championship kicks off this weekend, and Atlanta United 2 will be in action on Sunday. Afternoon match at Fifth Third Bank Stadium against the Charleston Battery. Talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about a U.S. soccer legend who will be playing in the USL Championship this year. There's all kinds of things to start with. John, you started us off yesterday with a ridiculous question that got everybody going. Do you have another one of those up your sleeve today?
Well, see, now that you've shocked me.
You don't, basically, is what you're saying.
No, I can come up with one, but Matt Wagner did say that as he was listening to yesterday's show, apparently we need to do another show outside the perimeter and head back up to Pizzeria Azzurri. All the White Castle and Crystal talk is making his stomach turn. He's suggesting that we should add an official segment to the show about food.
I'm going to go with no, because I might give myself a headache banging my head against the wall next to me with some of John's takes.
I was going to say, food takes down here. Isn't that like hour number 9?
No, it's like nothing, because I don't want to be a part of it. You can do that yourself.
It'd be a short show.
No, you got plenty of takes. They're just bad. That's all.
Come on now. Not all of my food takes are bad.
See,
I'm having you think about this one, isn't I?
No, I'm trying to find something to bail you out with, and I'm coming up empty.
No, but what I do want to start the show off this morning with is Nashville SC's next match is in Portland. And great move by the Portland soccer community and by the Timbers, where, if I remember correctly, if you get a $35 general admission seat, 15 of those dollars will go to tornado relief. Very cool move by the Timbers when that came across yesterday.
Yes, it's very cool that Portland is doing that. And keep an eye on all of the Nashville SC accounts and the supporters groups accounts up there, as there will be a need for some help with everything that's happened this week with tornadoes. So be on the lookout for how you can help Nashville. Very cool that Portland is taking up that and contributing to the efforts. Let's get into tonight's big game, U.S.-England SheBelieves Cup. Tournament kicks off at 4:15 with Spain and Japan. But this tournament, it started as a friendly tournament. It felt like a marketing gimmick. But it's actually turned into one of the elite women's international events, in any year. And this is a really big year because you're preparing for the Olympics later in the year. And you get to kick it off with, first off, I think it's just a great field this time around with U.S., England, Japan, and Spain. But you get that World Cup semifinal rematch with U.S. and England to start this thing. The U.S. women's national team, with just the way their schedule functions, you get a lot of friendlies, you get a lot of games against, opponents who aren't at that level. Not the case here at all. This will be a great test, and you have an England team that, has been a little shaky since the World Cup. So this is a big opportunity for them as well. This kicks us back into competitive matches for the U.S. women, and this is what gets all of us in the game excited. I do not get excited about arguments about equal pay. It's something that the Federation should not have let to get to this point. They need to fix it. They need to stop having that hang over everything's head. It's just a distraction. I don't get excited about CBAs and that kinds of stuff. I get excited about matches. I want to see this team play, and especially now that, every year it feels like the talent level across the world for women's soccer gets better and better and better, and the U.S. women are going to be tested every year to stay where they are as the top team. England is one who has really pushed into this upper echelon. I think Spain is another one that we'll see in this tournament that is growing maybe faster than anybody else. This should be a really great event over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and you mentioned how the competitive balance is getting closer and closer and closer to the United States. And I think that anyone who appreciates the sport and enjoys the sport wants to see gaps close. You want to see the world continue to move forward on the whole and have these kind of competitive tournaments that we're anticipating. And you mentioned competition, and for me, when I'm thinking about just competition in general, I was thinking internally first and foremost, because if I'm not mistaken, the roster size here for SheBelieves is larger than what you're going to have for the Olympics, right?
Yes.
So there's going to be some choices, and probably some tough choices, that have to be made from this roster that you're seeing at SheBelieves, if you're Vlatko Andonovski, to get you down. I think it's from 23 to 18 to get that 18 player roster ready for the Olympics. And so you've got to figure out, in SheBelieves, about the versatility that you're going to need for the roster for the next tournament coming down the line. So I think that, for me, that's another part of the subplot of all of this, if you're a fan of the women's national teams.
And that's the challenge for Vlatko Andonovski, because you're expected to win this tournament, but you have to take a look at some players. You have to see if Lynn Williams is somebody that you want playing out wide with your style of play in the Olympics, because that's going to take a spot from somebody else. Is Andy Sullivan one of the midfielders that you want to back up? And I think it would be backing up a midfield trio that's honestly a group of four, with Julie Ertz, with Lindsay Horan, with Rose Lavelle, with Samantha Mewis. That four is established. Is Andy Sullivan the fifth one? Can you afford to take a fifth one? Or do you have somebody else who can drop into one of those roles if needed? Mallory Pugh is part of this roster, being brought back into the team. Is she going to make that next step? Is she going to be able to get ahead of some of the talent in front of her? Young, talented player, but you're looking at a group of forwards that includes Williams, who has played very well under Vlatko Andonovski so far, Megan Rapinoe, Kristen Press, Jess McDonald, Carly Lloyd, and Tobin Heath. That's not easy to jump any of those players and get there. And don't forget, Alex Morgan hasn't ruled out being back in time for the Olympics. So that creates another difficult situation for Vlatko Andonovski. Players have to take advantage of the opportunities that they get. I think one spot that you could see somebody get that opportunity is in the back line. Center back, you feel pretty good with Abby Dahlkamp or Becky Sauerbrunn. You have Emily Sonnet in the mix. But out wide, we've seen Crystal Dunn lock down the left side, Kelly O'Hara on the right. You've got a veteran in Allie Krieger. You've got a player in Casey Short who has been on the outside looking in, hasn't gotten as many opportunities as others. And you have a young up-and-coming player who can play in the middle and on the outside in Tierna Davidson. How many of these players are you going to be able to take to the Olympics? The competition for those Olympic spots really takes hold in this tournament. This is where players who are on the fringe have to prove that they're worthy of that ticket.
Then let me bring in a name here. And as you've been going and naming names, I've been trying to write down, a possible 18. But what about someone like a Carly Lloyd, who is 37, but still scoring goals? What about her as part of the discussion here? I mean, the versatility that you're looking for in the Olympics, what about Carly Lloyd?
let's be real. You're not going to leave Carly Lloyd out if she's playing well. It's not going to happen. Not with this being her more than likely, because I don't see her being able to stick around for another World Cup cycle and be ahead of other players. This is it. So if she's playing well, she's on the roster, because this could be her U.S. women's national team swan song in competition. So that does factor into it. I mean, we have to be realistic about that. If she is playing well, she's going. There's no question.
All right, so
you want to be the manager to leave a legend off?
Yeah, no.
No, you're not. Nobody's taking that one on.
So right now we've mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players at least that could be a part of the 18. Lloyd, what about Megan Rapinoe?
I'd be shocked if she's not.
So Lloyd, Rapinoe, Sauerbrunn, Dahlkemper, Ashlyn Harris, probably one of your two keepers, yeah?
I don't know. I think backup goalkeeper's up for grabs.
Okay.
Alyssa Nair has locked down the number one, at least from the World Cup. We'll see where Vlatko Andonovski feels about it, but Adriana Franch was part of the World Cup roster as well. I don't think anything's decided about the two, because I don't think you take three. You're only going to take two to the Olympics, and you've got three who were part of that last roster. There's others, too, who didn't even get that call that I think could be in this mix, but I'd say number two goalkeeper's up for grabs.
Okay. All right, so Lloyd, yes. Rapinoe, yes. Dahlkemper, yes. Sauerbrunn, yes. Two goalkeepers. So that gets you to 6.
Well, let's all. You're putting together a roster right now, and you got 3 games in this tournament. You've got other friendlies. You've got an NWSL season kicking off. Like, it's still way too wide open, because you're going to have an injury somewhere. You always do. You're going to have somebody get off to a bad start in league play. It happens. You're going to have somebody come in hot in league play. That's going to happen too. So it's super early. I think you're probably not, if you're Vlatko Andonovski, I don't think you're going into this tournament with a power ranking of your roster for the Olympics yet. I think you go out of this tournament with that.
Okay.
But you've got to look at Casey Short, Mallory Pugh, Tierna Davidson, Andy Sullivan, Lynn Williams, Jess McDonald. You've got to look at those players who are on the edges of the group right now and see them in these competitive matches and see how they respond.
Do you have, I mean, you've mentioned players, and for me, it's looking at players like a Lynn Williams, like a Jessica McDonald, like a Tierna Davidson. Those would be some of the 3 for me that I would want to take a look at. Is there anyone on the list? I mean, you mentioned Casey Short as a part of it too. I guess, is there a list of intrigue for you when it comes to this tournament?
No, I want to see more of Vlatko Andonovski's style and what his stamp on this team is going to be. You look at a player like Crystal Dunn, who's a great attacking player who has played in the back with the national team. Does Andonovski see her there? Or does Andonovski want to get her into a more attack-minded role? If so, at whose expense, and then what does that do with the open spot? I think outside back is a position that we've thought over the years was one that the U.S. might be able to upgrade at. I think there's another big question is just, does Andonovski stick with a 4-3-3 kind of shape? Or does he decide to go 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 or any other variety, or does he mix and match? I think there's still a lot of questions about what exactly Andonovski is looking for here, and that's going to affect it. If you're going to play out of a 3-4-3 versus a 4-3-3, or especially bigger differences like a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2, that's going to affect not just your 11 but your 18 that you're going to take to a tournament, because then you're prioritizing different positions, different groupings. We don't really know just yet. I mean, it's still early in the process. It's a good match to start with here in this tournament, too, with England, because England's in a really tricky spot, too, as they get ready for the Olympics, because it's not just England, it's Team GB. So you're going to have, there's probably going to be a lot of political pressure on Phil Neville to take somebody from each of the home nations. And from Scotland, that's easy. Scotland was in the last World Cup. You can pull a Scottish player that's going to make this group better. But the overall base is going to be English. So for them, they're not even going from a World Cup roster last summer to an Olympic roster and losing a few players. They're going to lose even more because you're going to have to, from a political perspective, from Neville, he's going to have to take players probably from each of them. So you're going to have to take, a player from Wales, a player from Northern Ireland. That might not be that easy because you don't have as strong of a pool to pick from there. And he's got players developing too who are showing themselves. He, according to the BBC, he gave his players the lineup yesterday, and one of the players who could be in it is a 19-year-old forward who plays for Manchester City, Lauren Hemp. New player, breaking into it. She says she watched the World Cup last year. She's wanted to prove that she should be part of this group. She gets a huge opportunity. So England's got a lot to work with as well. Maybe even more pressure in terms of the individual players. And they haven't been playing well lately either. They've only won 2 of their last 7. Lucy Bronze has an injury, so she's out. Rachel Daly hasn't played in a long time because the NWSL's been out. England has generally leaned to players from the Women's Super League in England and other players who play in Europe. So Rachel Daly could come in, but she's not in form right now. Beth Mead is out injured. So it's tricky for Phil Neville. This should be a really interesting match on a variety of levels tonight.
Then when you look at Japan and Spain, I know that with Spain, I think eyes are drawn to players like a Jenny Hermoso. And once again, when it comes to Japan and Spain, for me, I want to see them. I just want to continue to see their growth and the world getting closer. That's what I want to see coming out of this tournament, heading in toward the Olympics. I know the Olympics will be the larger scale base that we can sit there and look at for the game in and of itself. But I'm going to be drawn just as much to Japan and Spain for those reasons that I would be for the U.S. and for Team Great Britain.
Well, this is what's so tricky about the Olympics is Spain's not going to the Olympics. So it's only 8 countries. The Olympic soccer tournament on the women's side, it is a senior international tournament. It's not like the men where it's U23s plus 3 overage players. It is, a mini World Cup. It should be more than 8 countries, first off. And I think they need to figure that out. It is Brazil, Canada, Great Britain, Japan, Netherlands, New Zealand, Sweden, and the U.S. For Spain, this is the biggest thing that they have this year before you get into qualification for the Euros coming up next year. So this is it for them. They're going to go all in on this. This is a statement for them. Japan, it's a team that I think is still kind of getting to that next generation. And they're going to be looking to build from here for that Olympic tournament. But this is kind of the start of the year for the women's game. The NWSL will be kicking off pretty soon. You're getting teams into preseason now. It's a good night for women's soccer, and I'm trying to get your TV information, especially on that first game. I think the first one's going to be streamed. I don't know if it's actually on TV. I wish U.S. Soccer made this a little bit easier to, see immediately what channel things are on. ESPN2, 2-day NA for England and United States. Tonight, 7 o'clock, it is in Orlando.
And it's on ESPN3, Spain and Japan.
Okay, so it's streamed on ESPN3. You don't have to have ESPN Plus to see ESPN3 stuff. As long as you have ESPN, you'll be able to see it streaming. So, that's your games on the women's side. We'll be talking about this tournament as it goes. This is a big one to kick it off for the U.S., the most difficult one on paper when you look at the rankings. U.S. comes in number 1, England comes in number 6, but Japan and Spain will be tough as well. And I think for the U.S., it's that combination of internal competition for spots. Players have to prove themselves, but they also have to make it fit within the team context because you have to win these matches. They're expected to. They're expected to win this tournament. It's not an easy tournament to win. It's difficult with 3 very different kinds of tests. Very well-booked event, the SheBelieves Cup this time around.
So you mentioned the Olympic tournament. How many teams would you expand it to?
I mean, it's hard to go to 12. You almost have to go to 16. So with the World Cup being so much larger now, I think you can do 16 and not take away from the World Cup tournament. I mean, that's why on the men's side you don't have a full men's senior Olympic tournament because FIFA won't allow it. On the women's side, I think they benefit from having the extra competition at the elite level, so expand it. Go to 16. 8 just feels a little bit too small, and the qualifications all over the place, too, in different parts of the world, so I'd go to 16. I think that would make for a better tournament.
Okay. And, I mean, it makes a lot of sense just to double it for the sake of 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, if you want to get into it that way, because 12 would kind of create some interesting math about how you would get toward medal rounds and things like that. But that was why I wanted to ask.
Yeah, 12 just is too complicated because then you're taking like a best third place team or something or whatever. It just gets weird.
All right. You had mentioned a couple of other topics. You'd mentioned the USL Championship, MLS trying to figure out how to possibly shorten the gap between the end of the season and the beginning of the next. What else is where do you want to go next this morning?
Well, why don't we go to the Twitters and people's Thursday thoughts for us?
Sure. Let's see. Let's go with Alex and his Thursday thought. He says, from Saturday, was Brad wearing a third goalkeeper kit? He had said Albright, and we've seen the yellow and green. Thought gray may be a third because the first 2 were too close to the bananas. Either way, more gray, please.
Well, I think Brad's going to try to wear the gray every week if he can because he doesn't like those highlighter ones. I don't know if they think about it in terms of a third kit, but yeah, it's the third one we've seen. So I don't know how they go sometimes with this. I don't know the selection process. I think some seasons we see more than 3 kits. Some seasons we see a goalkeeper really stick with one color that they like. So,
and if you're winning with it, you're going to stick with it.
To a degree. I mean, you can't just stick with it if it clashes with the other team, but I think Brad generally tends to push for the black or the gray or something like that. So we'll see if he sticks with the gray one. I liked it. I thought it looked good. The bright ones are a little bright, and they would have clashed with Nashville's rather bright kits in general.
Festival of Stepovers is next on the line. And I think that this is the first time that Festival has come in and been a part of the show. So welcome. Definitely starting to recover from the shock of Joseph's injury. It's good to see him up and smiling. You guys have helped so much on Soccer Down Here! ! Thank you for getting us through it so far. Excited for the weekend. Loved Doug Robertson's column on Joseph and giving chances.
Yeah, that was a great column from Doug. Check that out at the AJC. Really, really good stuff. Was glad to see something a little different, looking at this from a little bit different perspective. That was very cool. It's not easy. I mean, when you go into a season and you plan and you have a focal point and then that's taken away after one game, it's tough. And it's going to be tough in the short term. I mean, you've got a game Saturday and then you're preparing to go rather quickly to Mexico for a huge game that's going to be even more difficult now. And then you're coming back home for a league game. Then you've got Club America coming to Kennesaw. I mean, it is a lot of stuff that is being thrown at you in a short period of time while you're trying to figure this out. It's almost a little bit of just get through game, travel back, game, stay home, prepare, game midweek, then go to Chicago. And then you get a break. I think that break is where you might see if things start to change, if you see a player come in, if you see differences in the system, those sorts of things, that break is going to be the spot where it makes the most sense. But this short term, it is a little bit of survival. It's also an opportunity, and that's professional sports. You know, I mean, take a player like Adam John, who was in Columbus, never really got that opportunity to be the guy. Same in San Jose before. Goes to Phoenix to be the guy in the USL Championship, and scored 17 goals. Did everything you could ask for a team that was, you know, one of the best teams in the league last year. Surprisingly knocked out in the postseason where they were. And then he gets an opportunity to come here and be in a reserve role. Well, now that's changed. And if Adam John comes out, he gets the opportunity, he gets that start, finds the back of the net, keeps finding the back of the net, brings others into the play, makes everything work up top, well, that's going to change the whole conversation about what to do. So it's a big opportunity if he gets that call on Saturday. It's a big opportunity if it's Pity Martinez who gets that call, because that means somebody else is going to come into the midfield. And don't know if it's going to be Mateo Sosetu. Probably not, considering he hasn't trained yet this week. Don't know. We'll get an update today from Frank de Boer, who's speaking to the media about timelines and such. This is the other complication that's just completely out of your hands with visa processes and paperwork and all of this stuff. It's so difficult, and it's the worst timing. Then you also have injuries to deal with, too, so it's hard. But if you go with Pity as the 9, somebody else is coming into either the attacking midfield role, or Heineman's moving up into that, and somebody's coming into the other more holding midfield role, and they're going to get an opportunity to stake their claim on a spot. That's the exciting element of this, is you're going to have players who will have opportunities to step up. And it's always, for me, really fun to see when you get that happen. When you see a player who grasps the opportunity to shine. And that's what this is. And you have to try to take it and run with it. Whether it's John, whether it's Pity in that number 9 role, whether it's somebody else coming into the midfield, or things change up because, you know, look, you might change the shape. You might go to the 4-3-3 instead. That might allow somebody else to come into this team and make something happen. You're going to have to see, at a minimum, one player come into the lineup that started on Saturday, because one player we know is not starting. Could be 2, depending on Franco Escobar. That's a huge opportunity. That's the exciting element. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to go to the next one. Finish your thought.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Lieutenant Dave, early this morning, Doug released another column. He said that read Doug Robertson's article on the Quincy Clause, wondered what your hashtag Thursday thoughts were on it, as well as the already or soon-to-be filled senior roster spot with Atlanta United.
Okay, hold on. Now I'm confused. What clause?
The Quincy Clause. Doug came out with an article at about 6:30 this morning, and what Doug is suggesting is Quincy Amarikwa. That's his suggestion, quoting from the article. My solution is the Quincy Clause, which is a reference to Quincy Amarikwa, who scored 26 goals in a career that started in 2009. To go forward, we must go back. Doug is asking, why are Joseph Martinez and Adam John the only strikers on the roster? The team traded Romario Williams to Columbus last season. During the offseason, the team didn't protect Brandon Vasquez, lost him in the expansion draft to Nashville, which traded him to Cincinnati. Hector Villalba wanted guarantees of playing time that couldn't be made. He was sold to a club in Paraguay where he's doing quite well. And then, so Doug says, so to move forward, here's my plan. First, in the spirit of giving someone a break, give John a chance to be a full-time striker. He's never received more than 11 starts in MLS since his career started with San Jose in 2013. He's a proven scorer in USL. He needs a chance with Atlanta United. Really, the team has no other options at this point. Second, figure out how much time...
Hold on. Okay. No, I completely disagree that the team has no other options at this point. There are plenty of options that you can do with this in terms of that different kind of attack with a false nine that we've talked about. That is a valid option, and it is something that will be considered. I agree. I think the most likely in the short term is Adam John, and one big reason why is that match at the Estadio Azteca, you're not going to have a lot of the possession. If you play with a false nine, you have to dominate possession to get the best out of the system. You're not going to have that in Mexico. You're probably going to play Adam John there anyway because you're probably going to be playing more direct out of the back. You want the bigger striker in. So in the short term, I think that makes a lot of sense. But you do have options. And this is something where if you think about the game in just a very rigid way as he's not a forward. Well, can he play a forward in this system? But he's not a forward. But can he play a forward in this system? In a 3-4-3, in a 4-3-3, you can play with a non-traditional number 9. We've seen Barcelona win championships with it and score tons of goals with it. We've seen Spain win competitions with it. We've seen Chelsea use it with Eden Hazard. We've seen Liverpool use it this year with Bobby Firmino. You can do it. So it's not a situation where there's no other options. That I disagree with that.
Second point from Doug. Figure out how much time Martinez is likely going to miss. He and the team could get really lucky, and it could be 6 months depending upon the type of surgery. Could be a year, which is normal.
All right. Let's not read Doug's column. Go to the AJC.com, please, and
sure.
And get the links for Doug. Doug needs clicks. Get Doug his clicks. Go read the thing. We're not going to read it on the air. Okay. You don't know how long Martinez is going to miss. It's just a flat-out thing. He hasn't had surgery yet. There's no way to know. You can't know until you get in and see what the damage is. There's no way to know that. So there's no way to say he's not going to play this year. He's going to be out 12 months. There's no way to know that. You don't know that right now. So I understand the whole idea of just saying, no, he's not coming back this year. If you get in and you're able to have the surgery and there's no other damage and he bounces back quickly, you don't want to put him on the shelf for the year if he could be back and contributing in September. I don't think he's the personality that you want to put on the shelf for a year if he could be back before that. I don't think you want to make any of those decisions until you have the surgery and you know. In general, and the whole Jurgen Damm thing, look, there's no way to know anything about this at this point because he's out of contract in the summer. Nobody knows what's going on in terms of him and Tigres. You haven't announced a signing for him. So, yes, you have an open roster spot and an open international slot. Was it intended for him? Maybe. Do you have a contract with him? If you don't, well, things change, and you might have to use it elsewhere. Quincy Amarikwa in general, and the Quincy clause thing kind of threw me because I'm like, what are we making up a new rule now? Quincy Amarikwa is an out-of-contract striker who has bounced around the league, who from a depth perspective would be a good fit. He hasn't been a starter in this league in 4 or 5 years, and that was a minimal time that he was a dedicated starter in this league. So asking him to turn into a starter, over 30, it's a big ask. But can he be a player that comes in and is part of depth? 100%. Can he be a great weapon off the bench late in games? Yeah, because of his work rate. But I don't think he is the answer, in air quotes, to replacing Joseph Martinez. I think he's the answer to increasing the depth at the position. And the whole thing about the $250,000, all that type of stuff, you're not in that conversation until Joseph Martinez would be placed on a season-ending injury list. And until he has surgery, that's highly speculative to do that. So the way I look at this right now is Adam John's going to get the first crack at it because he's going to play in Mexico, because of the style of play that game is going to call for. After that, you've got 5 games in 15 days. You're probably not going to have a whole lot of training time in between that. This week, maybe you've had some time to work on We have this variant with Adam John as the 9. We have this variant with Pity Martinez as a false 9. We might break that out at some point in this next sequence of games, but we might not, because you're not going to have many other sessions to really work on it. Also, think back to last year, though. You didn't have any sessions to work on Pity Martinez and Barco up top in a 3-5-2, and you found a way to make it work. If you have smart players, and if you build a system and a style of play, they can adapt. So, I think in this 5-game, 15-day stretch, John is the easy solution, and he'll be the solution, I think, for at least some of it. Pity could get an opportunity. You could put Barco up there, too. You could recreate the 3-5-2 with Barco and Pity up there and somebody playing in behind, like Heinemann, who did it in Orlando last year. You've got some options there. But I don't see any roster changes, really, in terms of a player being incorporated into the group until after the international break. That's going to be your real opportunity to incorporate somebody new. Could you make a signing before that? Sure. And if they're international, you're probably not going to get the visa before that anyway. If they're within the league, maybe they can hop in and give you an option off the bench in the very short term, but you're not going to fully incorporate them until that break where you can get some training sessions in. So Ameriqua's not going to come in and be Joseph Martinez or be a player who you could expect to start 30 games this year. I don't see that. I do think if you go that route, John will get games, Pity will get games up top, Barco or Josetu or Heinemann could get games up top. Who knows if you get really crazy with a false 9. And if you bring in Ameriqua, he'll get some games up top. But you'd like to have, I think, a little more clarity before you get to that point.
And later in Doug's article, he would like to have a rule change along the same lines of like what Barca did a couple weeks ago.
It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have a rule change like what Barca did, because what Barca did is ridiculous. Let's get it clear here on what's going on. The Barca rule change is to bring somebody in outside of the transfer window that's in La Liga. That's a very specific rule to La Liga. And it's a stupid rule because the team that Barca was able to sign a player from wasn't able to replace the player. So it's a horrible rule. And the striker pool idea, like, that's just not going to happen. And the reason why is field players can play other positions. You can play a midfielder as a striker. Cesc Fabregas has been involved in winning competitions for Spain as a striker. I don't look at him normally as a striker. He's won things playing as a striker. Eden Hazard, Bobby Firmino. I mean, striker's not a specialized position. Goalkeeper's a whole different conversation. Striker, yes, it's just like some players are better center backs than others. Some players are better strikers than others. Absolutely. But players do have to play other positions at times, and in systems where it is less rigid, you're going to have more overlap in that. So Pity Martinez can play striker. Ezequiel Barco can play striker. Emerson Heinemann, Mateo Josetu, in a pinch could probably play up there. Is it ideal? No, of course not. That's not where they play typically. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. Who was playing up top for Nashville at the end of the match on Saturday? Walker Zimmerman. He's a center back. But he went up there. How many times do we see a center back go up top late in a game? All the time. All the time. We've seen Gerard Piqué go up top for Barcelona late in games. It happens. So you're not going to have a striker pool because it's not a goalkeeper situation. You're not going to do that.
Have you had the chance to catch Taylor Twellman's premiere?
Yeah, it's a good show. Cool to see ESPN contributing to this to make it happen. It's going to be on their Twitter, I think Twitter, Facebook. I don't know if it's on their YouTube. It's on all their social media channels. It's going to be a weekly show. It feels like upgraded from the MLS Rewind that they were letting Taylor do in the basement. It feels like they put a few more resources to it. So it was good. Nathan
Pugh wanted to know you thought about the Atlanta United talk on the show, and he has a disclaimer. He says,
No.
I don't...
Stop.
Okay.
I respect Matt Doyle. I understand how fans that might not like Matt Doyle. That's two different things. Matt is very good at getting people agitated. That's different than a respect conversation, because Matt is very good at what he does. His columns, I think, are the best that MLS Soccer's ever produced. His regular columns, looking at the week that was, looking at the upcoming week, those are so important for the conversation around this game. And I think he does an amazing job with that. On social media, does he poke at things to get a reaction? Absolutely, he does. I wish he didn't do that as much, because it distracts from the great quality work that he puts out. But his points on the show, I thought, were completely valid. There was nothing wrong with anything he said.
And that was what Nathan followed up with. He said that Doyle raised a valid point, i.e. pity false nine.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it on Stoppage Time too, and a lot of people have talked about it. It's not a unique thing. It's one of the solutions that is there, because we've seen a taste of it before. We've seen Pitti in that forward role next to Joseph in a 3-5-2, and he played it like a forward who's going to drop into the midfield. So if you don't have Joseph there, you take that away, you're playing with a false nine. You can do that. It's one of the solutions. I mean, it's what you're down to is right now you're figuring out solutions. You have a striker in Adam John. You have other options in players who are smart, crafty players who can score goals, but also do other things from that role, because playing in a striker role is more multifaceted than just finding the back of the net and just shooting on goal. Like, there's more things to it. So Pitti playing in that role, it can be done. When we talked about it on Stoppage Time, what it can do is, against certain opponents, you can overload the middle of the park and really force them into coming out of their shell, stepping out, and then creating space in behind. And when you have speed out wide like Brooks Lennon and Jake Mulroney or George Bello and Manuel Castro as well, when he's available, they're going to be able to cut in behind and take advantage of that space. And if you have Pitti, Barco, Losetu, Hindman all in a tight space playing 4 against 3 or 4 against 2, I'm going to trust the technical players on the ball to then pick out spots, either picking out spots for the wide players charging in or picking out spots for those combinations to then send players in. So that's the idea behind a false nine, is to create those opportunities. Adam John is a very different kind of option. He's a player who is going to stay ahead of Pitti and Barco far more often than Joseph was. He's not going to drop as deep. And you're going to try to feed him a little bit more from crosses. You're not going to play crosses in for Pitti Martinez to be going up for headers. It's not his game. That's one thing that I disagreed with Doyle on. I think being a little fixated on the physicality of the forward role. If Pitti's playing that role, that's not what you're asking him to do. You're not asking him to go up and battle Walker Zimmerman for headers. You're not going to be putting in as many crosses like that, because why would you? It's a wasted play. You're going to be keeping the ball on the deck. You're going to be trying to combine and play through the defense, not put crosses in over top because you don't have the players on to get them. If you have Adam John, different conversation. Pitti, no. So you can create mismatches with a false nine, but it's not going to work against everybody. And look, this is where you're at right now. I think you're not going to find a perfect solution, because you don't have, and no team does, a forward on the bench who is capable of 30 goals a season. They wouldn't be on the bench. Just flat out. That's any team in the world. You're always going to have to figure out the solutions when you change that one person and everything is different. Because the person coming in to replace is going to bring you some different qualities. Maybe some things that they're better at than Joseph Martinez. Some things that they're not as good at. So what does that do? Does that unlock anything? Does it create any other opportunities for other players on the field? Does it give you a different way to attack? What does it take away? What do you have to adjust? These are things this team's going to have to figure out on the fly in 5 games in 15 days.
Michael Head with a question this morning. He says, do you know if there's a website or other source that states definitely if the roof will be open or closed? It'd be great to have one. Maybe I missed it.
No, I don't. I think they just announce it on the day of the match.
Ricky Ricardo in this morning with a roster question. Do we see Castillo or Bello this weekend? Are we expecting back 3 or back 4?
Well, both have trained, so I think it's possible that you could see them. I don't know about the shape, because then that gets to the next conversation is how much do you want to change in this short term? Do you want to stick with the 3-4-3 that you have played in preseason and you've primarily trained in and replace Joseph in that? I think if you play Adam John there, it's easy to do. It's a little more seamless. If you go Pitti there, it's a little more complicated in the 3-4-3. You think back to the Barcelona ones, the Spain ones, I think are the greatest touchstone when you're talking false 9, and a lot of that came out of a 4-3-3. They have played a false 9 out of a 3-4-3 as well, but out of a 4-3-3, what it does is your front 3, let's go back to, I believe it was the Barca Real Madrid game that was the 5-0 with Messi as a false 9 for the first time with Guardiola. Out wide, you had Thierry Henry, you had Samuel Eto'o. So they didn't stay as wide as they typically did in a Pep Guardiola system. They weren't in a 4-3-3 hugging the touchline. Now, this is a completely different conversation than what Atlanta did on Saturday, so keep that in mind. Your wide 3 in a 4-3-3, they want to provide that width. Well, with Messi in the middle, they came inside. So what happened is the 4-3-3, your number 9, your center forward, dropping into the midfield as a false 9, created a 4-4-2 diamond in a lot of ways, but your forwards that were wide in the 4-3-3 were coming in from wider positions. They weren't central like you would normally see in a 4-4-2. That's the false 9 element. So could you recreate that if you want to go Pitti Martinez as a 9? You could kind of work towards that direction. I think it'll be more effective once you have Manuel Castro, because then you'll have more of a true winger option. You can play Brooks Lennon there, but if you don't have Franco Escobar as a right back, it's a little trickier because you've got to think on that side too. So for me, the easier thing is 3-4-3, unless they've had more training sessions in a 4-3-3. And this week, if that was the idea that Frank de Boer has come up with to solve the problem after the Joseph Martinez injury, you've had the week to train. And some of it's going to be down to who's available, because we know Miles Robinson's a question, we know Escobar's a question, Bello's a question, Castillo's a question. You have Anton Walks, you have Fernando Meza, you have Jeff Larentowicz who can play in the back. You have Brooks Lennon who can play as a right back. Walks can play as a left back. So if you wanted to go 4, and let's say you're missing everybody, you're missing every possibility is a no, you could play a line of 4 with Walks on the left, Meza and Larentowicz in the middle, Lennon on the right. Your midfield would be Remedi, Hindman, Barco. You could play... Well, then it really depends on how you want to do it, because if you could play John as a 9, you could play Pitti as a 9. Let's go false 9 with it and just really have some fun. So then your midfield would be Remedi, Hindman. Who would I want to put in that spot? Man. If we're going to play Pitti as the false 9, and I'm playing Larentowicz in the back, I would bring Mo Adams into the midfield. So it'd be Adams and Remedi with Hindman a little more advanced. Pitti as the 9. Barco's going to be on one wing. Maybe it's Mulroney on the other wing with his speed. And then they become the forwards cutting inside when Pitti drops from the false 9, drops deeper. Or you could play John and Pitti and Barco up top. and it's the 4-3-3 version of the 3-4-3 where they're tucked inside. So you've got options, even with injuries, even with Joseph out, even without replacing him on the roster. There's still variations you can throw at this, and that's what's so interesting about it. Like, going through it in my head and kind of spacing it out and writing it down, there's not this dearth of options. Like, you've got possibilities. That's what's crazy about it, is even with a smaller roster at the moment, you've still got different ways to play. We'll see what Frank DeBoer settles on, but he'll be speaking to the media later today, and we'll see if he gives any kind of a glimpse into his thinking.
But that was why you built the team the way that you did, so you could have options. I mean, taking injuries aside, but on a game-by-game basis, that's why you built it this way. So if you're playing Team X who does this in a particular approach, you can plug in, player A, player B, player C, and have different formations. That was why it was built this way.
Well, you built a team to have, tactical flexibility. You didn't think you'd have to be forcing that tactical flexibility because of injury, but that's just part of it. You can, with the group you have, you could play 4-3-3, 3-4-3, 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2, 3-5-2. I mean, you can play whatever you want. You've still got the personnel, even missing a number of players. Is it the same? And this is what always comes up. That's the pushback, is, well, you don't have enough depth. Well, we just went through like 20 different possibilities of what you can do, but you don't have enough depth because it's not as good. Well, of course it's not as good. That's what depth is. Like, that's the whole point. You can't have a team of 30 starters, because what happens is those, let's see, there's 11, so then the other players, the other guys on the roster that are starters, that aren't starters, get mad about not being starters. And that doesn't work long term. There is a hierarchy in a team, but what this has done is it's created an opportunity for those guys who have been on the outside. Mo Adams could get time here. Got a chance to prove himself. Lawrence White got a huge chance to prove himself in Nashville. Did very well. That raises his standing with the group. Jake Mulroney has taken the opportunity and run with it. Probably wasn't the idea with Bello and Castillo in this team that Mulroney would be seeing as much time as he is right now. Doing well. Running with it. That's what you got to do. You got to have players who are hungry and ready to step in when the time calls for it.
John Nason this morning, it's, I guess, the hashtag TBT is Throwback Thursday.
Yes.
His hashtag Thursday thoughts is a photo from 3 years ago of a venue in Atlanta that was rather full. Great picture of Bobby Dodd Stadium.
I was wondering if you were going to do your thing where you just drop something in with no context and expect everybody to be reading your mind.
Vulcan mind meld. But no, great photo of two teams on a soccer pitch at Bobby Dodd Stadium, one of them Atlanta United. Full house. Really cool photo.
Yes, and it was the first game. And it was
can't believe that was 3 years ago.
Yes.
Jason Wright has jumped into the Bailey Daly situation, it looks like.
Okay.
He says he's got a poll for the morning, and he says he's got a fan poll. It's like, what do you want from Atlanta?
Okay,
what do you want from Atlanta United for the 2020 season in light of Joseph Martinez being out for at least a portion of it? Which result would you find acceptable and worth your time to attend or watch on TV? A 1-1 draw, a 1-0 or 2-1 win, or a 3-2 loss? It's kind of vague. I don't know if you can really... I can't answer that. Vote if you have an answer. I can't answer it because I do want to see this team play well. Yeah. I still want to see this team. When I say play well, I'm not talking about results. I'm talking about the way they play. Of course, I want them to get results. But I want to see them play good soccer. And I think they're capable of that. And I don't think the thought coming into this weekend should be, they're going to lose every game now. They're screwed. Forget it. It's not going to be the fools in the bleacher seats in Major League 2. You should be looking at this as a very talented team, and yeah, it's going to look different.
that creates a little bit of a buzz. It's not something you ever want to have to deal with, but there's a buzz of solving this problem. And who steps up? Does Pity Martinez have the year that earned him South American Player of the Year? Does Ezequiel Barco have the year that everybody has expected from an ultra-talented young player who has had success early in his career? Does Adam John realize his potential, and now that he gets the opportunity to be the man, does he play like the man? Does an Emerson Heineman step up and become a player that earns his way into the U.S. men's national team? Brooks Lennon, same conversation with him. Two guys who are very talented young players who have had a taste of it with the youth national teams. Do they take advantage of this and earn their way back in for Nations League and World Cup qualifiers? Fernando Meza, is he going to be a potential Defender of the Year? Is that going to happen for him? You've got all these different things that can happen now that are still part of the conversation. So I don't get hung up on individual results, and I don't think you can at this point. I think it's even less at this point. I think the bigger question is, how can you survive this short period of time where you have a number of games very quickly as you are figuring this out? And then what does that do to set you up for after the international break, and you need to get as many points as you can in April and May, and you keep progressing because you are going to be figuring this out on the fly. You spend a whole preseason building to play a certain way, and one big focal point of it is not there anymore. So now you got to figure it out on the fly. Can you take what you worked on and adapt it? Do you have to scrap it and start from somewhere fresh? What do you do? And that's the scary thing for a manager, but it's also managers who think about the game as deeply as somebody like Frank de Boer. It's the exciting thing in some ways, because now you're recreating what this team is in the midst of the season, and if you get it right, well, you're going to get all the credit because nobody expected this to happen. And that's the challenge. That's why you take these jobs, because the expectations haven't changed. Do you have an excuse? And I know we don't like to say excuses around here, but yeah, you do. But there's still a lot of an opportunity here for Frank to change the narrative about himself, for players to change the narrative about themselves, and to take advantage of this opportunity that's in front of them. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I'm excited. I'm not worried about an individual result here and there. I'm excited about the process that we're about to see. Let's take a quick break. Send us your thoughts. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts. Tweet at us at SoccerDownHere. More of that, more news, more things after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. He Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, March 5th edition. It's a Thursday, so we're taking your Thursday thoughts on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. Let us know what you're thinking about, whether it's U.S. Women's National Team, who's in action tonight, 7 o'clock, ESPN2, 2-day NA, U.S. England. Really, really good game tonight for the women as they start the SheBelieves Cup. A couple bits of news to keep an eye on. St. Louis could be announcing their team name and logo very soon, according to team owner Carolyn Kendall Betts. She told KMOX Radio in St. Louis that they've received 6,000 suggestions for a name. They've whittled it down to the top 5 or 6, and, quote, "We're hoping that it will come in the next couple weeks," she said. Cool. That's early because they don't hit the field until 2022. So good to get that branding out there early. Want to see how St. Louis builds their group. Miami has a game under their belt. They also have their first complaint filed against them with FIFA from Monterrey, and this is all going back to Rodolfo Pizarro and the acquisition of Pizarro. Monterrey, not happy about it. They filed a complaint with FIFA against Pizarro himself and Inter Miami. Monterrey claimed that Miami broke FIFA rules when Beckham called Pizarro, used video calls while he was still under contract with Monterrey. The complaint was lodged on February 15th. Investigation ongoing. ESPN.com has all of the information here. It's lawyers battling. I don't think anything changes. I mean, there was a release clause if it was met. I don't really know what Monterrey can argue about outside of contacting a player before he's your player or before you've hit that release clause. It's going to be complicated because of the release clause element of it. Also, Miami probably should, again, remind Pizarro, don't tell the media that our owner was talking to you beforehand, because
dude, be quiet.
That's a problem. You know, we know these things happen. Let's not be real. Let's not act like it's never happened before. It does. It happens all the time. But you don't talk about it. And Rodolfo might need to be a little savvier in that regard. I don't know what happens with it. It could be a slap on the wrist. It could be a fine. I don't think anything's going to change with Pizarro being forced to go back to Monterrey. That wouldn't really make much sense. So keep an eye on FIFA and how they handle this. I think there will probably be a rebuke of some sort, and that'll be about it. A player that we saw here in Atlanta with Atlanta United 2 last season has signed an MLS deal. Will Vent has signed a homegrown contract with Colorado. They sent a 4th-round draft pick to Atlanta to get his homegrown rights because he wasn't eligible yet under the Colorado side of it. So they have signed him to a homegrown deal. We'll see if he factors in with Colorado in the short term. They've got a lot of talent in the middle of the field, so he might see more time in USL Championship, but Will Vent gets that MLS contract that I think he came to Atlanta for, and I don't think he did enough to earn it. And he's a good player, but it just wasn't good enough. The timing wasn't right, and he moved on to Colorado, and it was a quicker route to it. So Will Vent is an MLS player now. USL Championship, a couple players that have joined the league in the last few days. Junior Burgos, who was a very early Atlanta United signing that most people have forgotten about, never played for Atlanta. He was under contract to Atlanta United in 2016, spent the year on loan, first with Tampa, and then I think he ended up in Charleston for a minute, but he was with Tampa Bay in the NASL, and it's one of the weirder decisions at that time that I don't know if it was his representation or the player who made the decision, or it was just about the money that Tampa was going to give him versus somebody else. He signed the contract with Atlanta United 1 year with an option, so they were going to reassess going into 2017. And he went to Tampa Bay, who had a bunch of players in the same position, and he didn't get to play very much. And if you're not getting time at the NASL level, you weren't going to get an MLS deal, and he ultimately didn't. He's played for the New York Cosmos since. He's an El Salvador national team player. He is signed with the Las Vegas Lights, where there are a number of other former Atlanta Silverbacks and Atlanta area players playing for Eric Winalda in Vegas. So Junior Burgos is part of that. Tim Howard has come out of retirement to play for Memphis 901. It was a retirement that lasted a few months, and I guess the sporting director for Memphis 901 convinced him to come out of retirement and play. Oh, that was Tim Howard.
Yes.
And it was probably one of the owners who had the conversation with the sporting director about, man, we could use a big ticket, big draw at the box office. Oh, wait a minute. That was Tim Howard too. So maybe he did the Three Faces of Foley deal where they were all talking to one another and he decided to come out and play. He's going to play for Memphis 901. It's great buzz in Memphis.
Yep.
I don't know if he'll be all that successful. I thought last year wasn't a great one for him on the field. I'll be curious to see with all of the media stuff he does and all the TV stuff he's doing with Turner Sports and Champions League, if that will continue. I don't know. But Howard coming out to play, there's a good chance you're going to see Tim Howard play for Memphis at the Proving Ground at Fifth Third Bank Stadium this season in the USL Championship when they come to town to face Atlanta.
Grant Butler, along those lines, when that was released, said, "I've heard of a player coach, but this is my first time hearing about a player sporting director owner."
It's a new one. Go for it. I mean, if he can still perform, and that's going to be the question ultimately, because he has a legacy, and you don't want to see him come out and not play well. I didn't think he had a good year with Colorado last year. I really didn't, and it's not going to get any easier dropping down a level. I mean, he's got the love for the game. He wants to be part of it. He can be kind of a coach on the field with his experience with a team that, is on the younger side in USL Championship. All that's great, but the performances have to be there, and we'll just have to see if they are.
It's going to be fun to see him and the USL Championship. You just don't want it to be one of those situations where it's like Johnny Unitas with the San Diego Chargers or Joe Namath with the Rams or something like that, where you mentioned you don't want legacy tarnishing, but I mean the level of play in USL Championship has definitely improved over the last handful of years, and it's going to be interesting to see how Tim Howard is between the sticks for Memphis 901.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it. I just don't have high hopes for it, and I don't want to see a U.S. soccer legend struggle in the second division. I hope that's not the case. I hope he comes back and has a good year. It'd be a better way to go out than after a so-so year with Colorado last season. It'd be much better for him to be the man, lead them into a playoff run. That would be a lot of fun to watch. It'd be a good way for him to end his career on a high note. I hope it goes that way for him.
No doubt. Programming update. We have day 2 of The Boss listening from India. So it is prime time again in India. We have listeners over there again.
Well, we have one listener in India. Let's not.
Well, it depends. It depends on if my wife is holding up her phone for others to sit there and say, "Hey, this is what's going on."
Okay, I don't know if we're that big, John.
I think we are.
All right. Hello, India.
You want to go back to the Twitters?
Sure.
All right. Colonel checks in this morning, and he was, with ideas that were trying to come across the board about making the gap between the end of the season in Major League Soccer.
Well, first off,
3 months ago.
Do you want to introduce why? I mean, the Colonel didn't come up with this out of nowhere. No offense, Colonel. Like the Colonel thinks a lot about the game, but this was prompted.
So what prompted it, sir?
Oh, okay, you don't know. All right. There's an article, Pro Soccer USA, titled Major League Soccer Examining Ways to Shorten Lengthy Off-Season. And this is all coming from different comments that have been made. All right, there was a big kickoff event last week with Don Garber, with league execs, with team owners, etc., etc. Don Garber said this: I think the off-season is too long, and there's no doubt about it. We've got to figure out a way to try to manage the fact that we continue to evolve our schedule and have not really been able to, even after all these years, settle on something that's perfect. When I saw the headline, I laughed because they immediately, in the year prior, made the off-season longer. And we said on this show, why have you made the off-season longer? You took a month out of the season. Why? Well, we know why. It's the World Cup in 2022 that FIFA has put in a country that can't play it in the summer where the World Cup should be played, and they have to play it in the winter time. So MLS has to conclude its schedule earlier. They couldn't have an MLS Cup the first week of December because the World Cup would be going on and players would be gone. So they had to move it up. They didn't want to say that was the reason that they did it, but that's why they did it. We know all this is the case. So they created a longer off season, and now they say it's too long. Well, of course it is. It's too long because it was better before, and now it's longer. That's not good. Now, some of the solutions for this that were brought up in this article, Pro Soccer USA, by James Justice. Clark Hunt, FC Dallas CEO and chairman, said that the league is in search of a, quote, meaningful competition that can help fill the void in winter. So he said, we're looking at a number of initiatives. You're aware of some things we're doing with Liga MX in terms of the Leagues Cup. I think there's a chance for those kinds of competitions to grow and perhaps eat up some of this time that has been created in the schedule. We'll get into the realities of all of that here in a second, but that's what has prompted this conversation that's been going on different places, different times since this article was posted yesterday. What were the Colonel's solutions?
Colonel's solutions: two-legged ties in MLS playoffs should help to shorten the offseason, perhaps remove some midweek games, and extend the regular season as well. And then Colonel rhetorically goes, when did the long offseason become a problem? Oh, yeah, last year when the MLS extended it, hashtag can't make it up.
Yeah, 100%. We said it when that was announced. The MLS season was cut from decision day being the last weekend in October to the first weekend in October. That meant more midweek games. The playoffs were condensed from being what they were, that overlapped an international break, to being condensed between international breaks by doing single leg. The playoff part of it, I'm going to leave to the side for now. I prefer two-leg playoff format across all, including the final. That's what I prefer. It's what I'd like to see. I think it would make for more drama. I think it'd give you more games. It'd give TV more things to work with. I would love to see that. If they want to go against that, that's fine. That's their decision. That ultimately isn't the big part of the conversation here, because you have teams who don't make the playoffs, and every year you add more teams, you're going to have more teams that don't make the playoffs, and their season ends early. So right now it ends the first week of October, and then their first competitive matches are, beginning of March. It's too long. It's way too long. So what do you do? So they want to do competition with Liga MX in that time. Well, that sounds great. That's like, oh yeah, that would make a lot of sense. We'll have an off-season competition, or we're not going to call it the off-season, obviously, but it's going to be a tournament, and it's going to be great, and everybody will be excited about it. Well, there's a league that you're trying to do this with in Mexico that has its own schedule, and you can't just say, well, yeah, this is what would work for us, so why don't you guys change your whole schedule around, and yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great. Let's do that. Well, no. That's not how it works. You can't do that. That's just not how these things go. So let's look at this past Apertura season in Mexico, which would be the end of the 2019 MLS season. The first leg of the quarterfinals, November 27 and 28. The semifinals, first leg was December 4 and 5. Now, the final was delayed because it was Monterrey, and they were playing in the Club World Cup. So the final, the first leg, was the day after Christmas. It would have been, I believe, the 11th or 12th, and then the second leg would have been that following weekend, the 14th or 15th. Well, that is the big chunk of the MLS offseason that you'd like to have a competition. So your 8 playoff teams in Liga MX, they're busy. So if you want to have it with the teams that don't make the playoffs, well, maybe Mexico would be into that. But then you're creating a competition where it's like you got all your teams because your final's the beginning of November. So if you want to keep everybody playing, then you're taking 10 Mexican teams and 26 MLS teams and trying to create some kind of a competition in the offseason and say that it's between 2 leagues. And, I mean, it's between your league and 10 teams. Is that going to work? Not really. And I don't see Mexico bumping their schedule up to match what MLS is doing, because for them, they're not even done with their Apertura regular season. They're not even into the last week by the time you're having your MLS Cup. So that's a huge difference in terms of the calendar. It's not going to work. So how are you going to do it? Don Garber talked about one reason they want to do this is the Champions League performances. And yeah, I agree. You need games. You need more games. You don't need as long of an off season. The fitness is a huge thing. The last 30 minutes of games, MLS teams are dying in these. You saw it in league play this weekend. I mean, DC was, zombie-ish in the final 30 minutes. It's hard. It's really hard, and you put teams in competition, they're gonna struggle in those moments. So, Clark Hunt said at the end of the article with James Justice, I think you're likely to see some schedule realignment over the next 2 or 3 years to afford a broader competition with the Mexican teams. I do not see a scenario where the Mexican teams and league, and you got to include Copa MX into it because that's something that involves the second division teams. You're not going to see them move to the MLS schedule, calendar-wise. MLS is going to have to figure this out. Now, Mexico, when you look at the full calendar year for them, they have the Apertura in the fall. They have the Clausura in the spring. The Clausura season starts in very early January. You also have a country that has the weather that you can do that. Can't do that here across the board. You're going to have to then really do some creative scheduling to avoid January games in New England and in Toronto and in Chicago and in Columbus and Cincinnati and New York and Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia and so on and so forth. So I don't know how you solve this in terms of that side of matching Mexico. I don't think you can. The weather's just too different. Could you maybe get a week or two where Mexico might be able to condense just a bit if they throw another midweek in, if you're able to get their final a little bit earlier, and you could have a December to early January tournament? Yeah, that could work. But I think in MLS, in terms of the calendar, you're going to have breaks that weather kind of forces, and you're just going to have to deal with those. So you might see a scenario where MLS, and this is what I would like to see, is go back to a hybrid of what you did before. So your regular season bumps up to the October or the beginning of November international break. So your regular season ends that week. Then you have the international break, just like you do now, but a month earlier. So you go to the break. That's your decision day on the Sunday before the break starts. You come back after the international break. You do the 2-leg playoffs, just like they do in Mexico. If you want to have a single game play-in round, that's fine. However you want to structure that, whatever. But your quarterfinal, semifinal, final, 2 legs. And you do it Wednesday, Saturday, Thursday, Sunday. I think MLS is strong enough to go to its TV partners and say, this is how we're going to do it. Can you clear room for us? This is how we're going to play. And it's good enough to make it work that way. So you do that, and that means your season is going to be over before the next international break. Okay. Then you're probably going to have a few weeks off, and that's good because your playoff teams will need that. Your teams that ended the regular season without playoffs will have had a longer break. They can start training earlier. And then you come back and you do an off-season tournament, whatever you want to call it, put money on the line because that's what's ultimately going to make it interesting. And have a late December to mid-January. You can do it over a month's time, roughly, maybe 3 weeks. And you can do it in warm weather venues in Mexico and in the southern part of the country. You can do it in Florida. You can do it in Vegas. You can do it in Phoenix. You've got plenty of places to do this. And you do a tournament that would bring these teams together for that period of time. The MLS teams can use it as a way to see new players, to bring in new players, to test young players, and it can be the kickoff to your preseason. And then you're going to be doing basically a season that runs more year-round, more like other clubs in the world, but it's going to be Americanized because you have to deal with the calendar and the climate here. So there's no way to match what everybody else is doing, but that might be the best solution to get more games, more competition, and have teams be more competitive. That is a heavily workshopped idea just to throw out there. Have at it. Does it make any sense?
Oh, yeah, it does. For point of reference, the Apertura semis were December 7th and 8th last year in 2019. The finals were the day after Christmas, December 26th, and then 3 days later.
It wasn't supposed to be. We talked about that.
Right.
The final was supposed to be the week after the semis.
Right.
It couldn't be because Monterrey was playing in a tournament called the Club World Cup at the time. They were a little busy.
Right. Yes. Then the Clausura started January 10th. So Clausura started that January 10th.
Yeah. And
so that gap space is there.
That it's small, so you're going to have to try to convince the Mexican League of maybe playing one more round midweek in each season to open things up just a little bit more. So that way, instead of January 10th, it would be January 17th. You could have your finals of the whatever tournament that you want to call it the weekend of the 10th. And it leads right into their season. That could work. You'd want maybe them to have their final a week earlier. So the first week of December, right around the time you'd probably like to have your final or have your final the week before. And then you have a little bit of a break and you go into a tournament that, are you going to give some players that tournament off? Yeah, you are. If players are tired, if they're worn out, if they're recovering from injury, hey, take the time off, go to the beach. But it's an opportunity for MLS teams to then bring in academy players, to bring in USL players and get those minutes and get that competition. It's a chance for the Liga MX teams to do the same and to bring up their academy guys and their reserve guys and get moments alongside first-team guys that are fresh, that want to play, that need to play, guys who are fighting for more time, that want to prove themselves. It's going to be a bit of a hybrid because it's going to have to be, but I think it can grow into something really interesting. And it's just like we see in a lot of the Latin countries when they have these types of events and these tournaments. Okay, you have this tournament. Is the team that wins MLS Cup going to be as excited and take this tournament as seriously and care about it as much? No. Same for the team that wins in Mexico. They just won something. They're cool. They're probably going to play a bunch of their young guys. That's good. They get those games. They need those games. But a team who missed the playoffs, who hasn't had competition, that is looking for a strong start to their next season, they might go all in on that and try to win this thing. And that's going to make it interesting because it's going to be something that you're going to see some different approaches to it. And I'm okay with that. I think it solves the problem that MLS has created for itself with the scheduling that FIFA created for them with the World Cup being in Qatar in 2022. It's all kinds of complicated, and there's no perfect solution, but that's the one that I think solves most of the problems and creates opportunities in different ways.
Because if you're a team that doesn't win your title in your league, I would think that doing something like this, A, it gives you the chance to look at some players, but B, it also gives you that opportunity to gain some momentum heading into the new season if you have a tournament like this for MLS sides and Liga MX teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the teams that miss the playoffs are going to take it the most seriously because it's a kickstart to the next season. But if that's what it is, that's okay. That's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nick Brawley on the Twitters this morning, his hashtag Thursday thought. Do we know if there's any reason the U.S. national teams haven't played at the Benz? I figured it could be just scheduling, but I think it would be an obvious choice due to attendance here. It seems like a huge opportunity.
I think it's just down to money because you're going to have to bring in grass to do it, and that's a cost. I do think the attendance would be great, and I think it's a real shame that U.S. Soccer has avoided Atlanta since 1977 on the men's side. The Gold Cup's different. CONCACAF booked that, and you had no guarantee that the U.S. would make it to the semifinal. Nobody knows. That was a CONCACAF booking. CONCACAF, at the time, wanted to book a lot of games in Atlanta because Jeffrey Webb, who has ultimately been in big trouble, was dumping a lot of money into things in Atlanta because he married a woman from Atlanta, and a lot of money that should not have ended up with Jeffrey Webb was ending up in building swimming pools and buying houses and stuff. So he was a big fan of Atlanta. So it was good for Atlanta for a short period of time with CONCACAF. Probably not so much anymore, unfortunately. U.S. Soccer, they haven't booked a men's game here since 1977. U.S. played China at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. Before that, they played a friendly World Cup qualifier in 1968 because Phil Woosnam was the coach, and he was based here with the Chiefs. So that's it. That's the only two full senior men's national team games that were booked by U.S. Soccer in Atlanta. That's crazy.
In 52 years.
It's crazy. The women have played in Atlanta more, and they've played at a number of different venues. They played in Kennesaw. They played at DeKalb Memorial. They played at Decatur High School, where I saw them back in the mid-'90s. They've played at the Georgia
Seriously?
Dome. Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, well, you weren't paying attention. It was right in your backyard.
True.
Happened.
Was it?
It was good. And they've been here before, and they'll be here again, I'm sure. But now with Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it needs to happen more often. And I know there's a lot of consternation back and forth, and it's part of it because of what the Federation has done in booking games for the women and playing them more on turf, and the women don't want that, and I understand it because it is a perception thing. They also booked them on some awful turf in Honolulu it's unplayable, and the game ended up getting canceled. An absolute embarrassment. So they want to play these matches on grass, and I totally get it. And you're going to have to build in a cost to doing it here to bring in grass. And for a one-off game, can you make the financials work? I think you can. I think the crowd would be huge for U.S. men or women here. But somebody's got to put up the cost. And if it's a promoter, if it's Atlanta Sports Council, if it's Atlanta United, if it's the stadium itself, whatever it is, that has to be sorted out. But the Federation should make it a priority to play national team games in the city that is drawing the largest crowds for soccer in the country. It's kind of a duh moment for me.
Yep. Will Dickerson, going back to yesterday, quickly, he says he's a day late, but Checkers is a guilty pleasure for him.
Oh, yeah, Checkers is good stuff. The fries especially. Yeah, that's absolutely a good call. But if anybody makes fun of you for getting Checkers, and especially their fries, they should be backhanded.
Yes. Perhaps a flogging, maybe?
No, just backhanded.
Okay.
Flogging takes too much work.
True. Sean Vergara this morning with a question about Adam John, and he wants to know, is he capable of 20 goals?
Well, he hasn't scored 20 goals as a pro anywhere. He didn't score 20 in USL Championship last year. 20 is a huge ask, and it's probably a completely unfair ask in this case. But can he get you double digits? Can he get you 10 to 15? He's never played with this much talent. He's never been in a team with this many talented attacking players around him feeding him. Factors into it, 100%. So I don't know. I hope so. I think he's got the game for it. I like his game. I've been really impressed with, you have a perception because you saw him come up with San Jose, and San Jose at that time was the Bruise brothers. I mean, it was Alan Gordon, it was Steven Linhart. It was, put the ball in the mixer, go fight for it. You're going to come out of there, bloodied, scraped up. I mean, it's going to be a fight. And so you think of John in that perspective. He's got good feet. He's a player who combines well. I like his ability to bring the ball down and play to a teammate. He's a more complete player getting to see him over these recent weeks. I like what he can bring to this team. Can he do that as a starter with this group? Because I don't think he gets 20, and I think that's too much to expect. But can he get 10 and be involved in creating another 10? Maybe. Not necessarily assisting on 10, but being involved in creating the opportunity, the spacing, knocking it down, bringing Ezequiel Barco or Pity Martinez into it. Maybe so. I think that's more likely than him scoring 20 by himself.
Kevin from Charlotte with a Thursday thought. He says something that's bothered him for a few years now. Why are cup competition matches referred to as ties? I always refer to them as legs when there's a home and away. Don't get me started on home and home phrasing. Facepalm emoji. Now everything is a tie.
I don't know. It's a European thing, I guess. It's just something that happens. I've generally leaned to calling it a series because I think that's the easiest way for everybody to understand it. I do say tie sometimes because I hear it so often. It's just part of the vernacular, just like nil is. For some reason, nil feels right, and I say that a lot instead of zero. Calling it a tie, I do that sometimes. It's more like a synonym for other stuff. So. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where it started. I don't know the history behind it.
Yeah, for me, it was like home leg, away leg. I've always used legs.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, that's different. You're not calling it the tie. The tie is the combined thing. The series. You're not calling it the home tie and the away tie. That's not how it typically goes.
Yeah.
So that's two different things.
Yeah. So for me, it's series. I've used series when you're talking about a collective, and then home leg, away leg.
I use it because it's the broadest way to encapsulate it. So that's usually where I'll go. But I'll say tie maybe the second or third time.
And then Swickster on the timeline wraps things up on the timeline temporarily. He says he's still heartbroken Junior Burgos wasn't re-signed to Atlanta United, having watched him play for the Silverbacks. Number 33 Burgos would have been the easy choice for kit customization.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't get the opportunity. And, I mean, ultimately, I don't think he's at that level. I don't think he's an MLS-level guy, and that happens. It's something that maybe we're starting to get to and not look at it as a negative thing. There's always this idea that every player who comes up, if they don't become the greatest player in the world in MLS or moving to Europe, then their career's a failure. Like, not at all. There's players who have a great career in countries all over the world that, look, they're not first division players, and that's okay. They might get a cup of coffee in the first division. They might, get one opportunity. They might go up with a team that gets promoted. It happens, but it's not this big negative if it doesn't always happen. Junior Burgos has had a really nice career in the second division here in the U.S. He has bounced around a little bit, but he's also represented his country, El Salvador, in big games. That's great. And he scored some amazing goals and had the privilege to see quite a few of those at Silverbacks Park. I always liked his work rate, his hustle, his style of play. He's a player that I enjoy watching. But I don't think he's an MLS level talent. And ultimately, in 2016, when he was on loan, he just didn't get the opportunities to show his talent because I think he went to a bad situation in Tampa Bay where it was too crowded for playing time, and he needed to play. He needed to make his case for that option to be picked up, and he didn't really get the opportunity to do so.
All right, we're caught up on Twitter. What else is on your mind right now?
The really USL Championship getting started this weekend because it's a big year for USL Championship. I mean, the league in 10 years since it really started to solidify after the teams broke away and formed the NASL, it's went from a handful of teams to, 36 now coming into the season? I mean, it's a lot. And you're getting stadiums built for these teams. You're getting these teams building academies and developing talent. You're getting really great atmospheres and really great teams. It's exciting to see. So, for Atlanta United 2 this season, you're wanting to make the playoffs. I mean, the idea is to get into the postseason, and that's not going to be easy in the Eastern Conference. Their power rankings have come out for the first time in 2020, and Phoenix is number 1. They were the best team in the regular season last year by far. They got knocked out in the conference semifinals. Huge upset in the playoffs. Louisville City, who lost in the final, they're number 2. They get Cameron Lancaster back. He's on loan from Nashville. It's a huge addition for them. Indy, with Andrew Carleton, is a top team in this league. They lost in the conference finals to Louisville. Carleton has a lot of pressure on him in Indy. That's what's great about this USL Championship now is when players go play in it, it's not just going to play random games and it doesn't mean anything. Andrew Carleton is being looked at as a piece of taking that team to a final, not just come in and play some games and that's it. They're bringing him in to win a championship, and that's pressure. And we see how he performs in it. Lagos Kunga in Phoenix, it's the same thing. Atlanta United 2 in the power rankings, they have them at 34, next to last. I disagree with that. If you saw them play at the end of the season last year and you see the talent they've brought in this year, I think it's the most talented team they've started with. I get people not necessarily buying into it yet, but man, that's really low. Hartford Athletic is ahead of them in the Eastern Conference. Loudoun United is ahead of them in the Eastern Conference. And Atlanta finished 14th in the East, too. Like, they finished ahead of Hartford. They finished right behind Loudoun. They finished ahead of Memphis, and Memphis is all the way up to 24. Maybe that's the Tim Howard effect. I don't know.
You look at Sporting and their club, and
the
they
West,
struggle.
I'm going to put it to the side. Like it's hard to compare East and West because they play separate schedules. And that's one thing about USL Championship. If you don't follow it closely, you can't really. Sporting's different, but I'm talking more like Colorado Springs and Tacoma and Vegas, and it's hard to do a power ranking across both conferences. Sporting, Philly, Atlanta. That's 3 of the 2 teams, and Colorado Springs is a team that works heavily with the Rapids. Tacoma is the 2 team for Seattle. it's hard because you don't have as much continuity, but I feel like with this roster that Atlanta United 2 has built, that's something they've addressed. It's not going to be as much of back and forth with the first team. It's going to be more of, this is our core, and we might get a player here. We might have a player or two come up from the academy. It's not going to be as much in flux as it has been for some of these teams that have struggled, and as it's been for Atlanta United too in recent years.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm just looking forward to the new season, and with all of the promise that Atlanta United 2 showed late last year in the back third of the season, and how we got to see everyone just continue to grow. I'm looking forward to seeing how that momentum carries over to this season, and with some of the players that they brought in, and seeing how Lawrence White, even though the way that Lawrence is playing, he may not be spending a whole lot of time with Atlanta United too, but seeing George Campbell continue to grow, seeing a Lawrence White continue to grow, seeing Brendan Moore continue to grow. All of these guys that we saw in the final third of the season last year, I'm just looking forward to seeing that progression continue as they try to work themselves into positions where they're with the first team and spending quality time with the first team, and it's not just being a part of a contract here or there, or U.S. Open Cup play or something like that. Substantive time as they continue to grow. That's what I'm looking forward to again.
Ricky Ricardo wanted a little bit of a rundown on where the two stand coming into the year. So some of the signings that I've noticed and I think are going to be players you'll get to know a bit. Ben Lundgaard, goalkeeper, reminds me a lot of Brad Gazan. He's a different kind of goalkeeper than the twos have had in recent years. He's 24, played for Pittsburgh last year. He was on loan from Columbus. He is a large individual. 6'6" is what he's listed as. That maybe is a little unfair to his height. He's got a huge wingspan, and he's very, very vocal. I like what Lundgaard brings to the table, and when you look at long-term development, he's a good goalkeeper to have in the mix because he's somebody who has been on an MLS deal. He's a potential MLS-level goalkeeper, and at 24, he's still young for a goalkeeper. So now he's in your system and seeing how Brad performs and what Brad works on and what Brad brings to the first team. You're expecting him to work on those things with the second team and bring that to the table. You have a veteran center back in Madou Jadama who has MLS experience, has been in an MLS system in Portland, played for the Timbers, played for Timbers 2, played for Tulsa. He spent some time in Chile with Colo Colo in 2015, and he's an Atlanta guy, so he gets to come home, and he's a Milton High School grad. Played for Tony Annan, so he's known to the club. He's got a ton of experience, and he's 25. You've got more guys in those kinds of scenarios this year. There's more of a core, I think, for the twos as opposed to previous years. Another one who I really like the signing is Bradley Camden-Feo, another 25-year-old, played for St. Louis last year. I noticed him both in USL action and in the Open Cup. He's got good speed on the left side. Grew up in Canada, played at UNLV, was drafted in MLS by Colorado, but started his pro career with Rochester. Last year, he was a guy who jumped out to me, seeing USL. So to get him in the mix, it's good. And you've got some guys like Philip Goodrum, who has been impressive with the first team in preseason. Goodrum is a talented player. Daniel Steedman, another young player that left college early. You've got some interesting talent. A couple guys that have been signed here that I have not had a chance to see much of yet. Abdoulaye Diop. He's another one who they're really high on. He's born in Senegal, came to the Montverde Academy in Florida, which is a place that develops a ton of talent. Played at a small college, Eastern Florida State, but a guy who is kind of raw coming into this, and he's a little younger. They really feel like he's a diamond in the rough. Played for Detroit City in the NPSL last summer. 20 years old. So you've got some guys that they feel like they have hit on a scouting side of things, a player like Diop that could be a surprise. You've got some solid professionals that are going to be important in building the core of this group. You're going to have some academy players get time. You know, Garrison Tubbs is a player that you would expect to see a good bit early on. You've got other academy players who are going to push their way up. Tyler Wolf, who's been with the first team. Will Riley, who's played for a lot for Atlanta United too, could be in line for a homegrown deal. You've got a few players that will come down and play, like George Campbell. I think he'll get time with the twos consistently to keep building as he gets ready to be an MLS contributor. You'll always get guys who are coming back from an injury who need minutes here and there. That's going to happen too. So for me, the story of the twos coming into 20 is more of a solid professional core that they've lacked in previous years. I think just every year you define what Atlanta United as a club is about more, and it's about controlling games, and it's about being able to play in different systems and adapt to what the match calls for and adapt to the group that you have. And that's one of the challenges that Stephen Glass has every match, is the lineup will be a little different. I don't think it'll be as different this year as it has been in previous years, and that will help him a little bit. That'll help give a little more continuity, and it'll help guys when they come down and guys when they come up to play for the twos to fit in a little bit easier, because then they're not coming in to be asked to define what this team is. They're just being asked to play a role and get minutes and contribute. It's going to be the guys like Lundgaard, Camden Feo, Jadama. Those are the guys who are going to establish what this team is all about. And then Goodrum, potentially Patrick Nielsen, although nothing has come from that just yet. We'll see if he's added to the roster before the season starts. Steedman. I think Tubbs is going to be a big part of this team early on. So I'm excited about the twos. I think they will be more competitive this year from a wins and losses perspective, even though that's not the ultimate goal. It's part of the goal. And I think if you are winning games in the way that they will play, because I don't think this is a team that will ever sacrifice development for a result. Not until you get into a postseason situation, then it's all about winning. But at this stage of the season, it is about developing players, it is about developing talent, developing the game system, and building. And if you're doing all that effectively, you're going to win more games. And I feel like you've hit the balance a little bit more this time around than you did in the past, where it was about getting guys minutes and getting guys time and developing players from a very individualized standpoint. Now you have a team structure that can help develop players even better.
A couple of other guys that I just want to throw out there for folks. We saw what Amir Bashti did last year, and he's another guy that I want to see and have his growth continue. And Jackson Conway, who's coming off of an injury, a foot injury, and just when he gets to be healthy, we saw what he can do up top last year. And once again, he's another guy that I'm looking forward to seeing his game continue to grow with Atlanta United with the twos. Yeah,
it's important. You need that. You need those guys with a little bit of experience. Conway is somebody that I'm really high on. Now you just got to get him fit. First off, it might be a minute before you see him in USL action. Bashti is a player who's raw, who's very talented, and will try things. And he's just got to continue to pick his spots as he develops. He's a player who has some really special abilities, but he's got to fit into the system and fit into the team and those kinds of things that every young player learns and develops. So that's what this team is all about. It's about making these players better players, giving them better opportunities. A player like Jack Metcalf. Jack Metcalf had a huge opportunity after playing very well for Atlanta United to go to San Diego and be a focal point for a brand new team, a very high-profile independent team. It's great for him. And it's a credit to Atlanta United, too. And you need those guys around, and that's why you've brought in the veterans who can establish that identity. They look at this as a big opportunity, but they also know, and you always know this. Camden Feo went to Guadalajara with the team in preseason. He's had the opportunity to mix in with the first team. Goodrum has had the opportunity to mix in with the first team. Lawrence Wyke gets the call, goes in, plays 45 minutes in the opener, and does well. You're seeing now guys want to come here because they might get that opportunity. And that's an important part of this as well. You have your Conways and your others that develop through the academy. They understand what it is to be Atlanta United. But you get guys like Camden Feo, who has options, can sign different places in the league. He wants that opportunity to impress and mix in with the first team and maybe work his way into a deal, because that can happen too.
3:30 Sunday afternoon, if my math is right. Up at the Fraction, Atlanta United 2 in Charleston. And Charleston's had an interesting offseason, to say the very least. They're no longer at MUSC Health out on Daniel Island. They are now playing into closer to downtown at Patriots Point, a new ownership group, and player turnover as well. So it's going to be a fun one. But it's going to be good to get the USL Championship off and running as well. So it's once again, soccer season starts in the USL Championship. That's going to be fun, and Charleston Battery Weekly returns as well, and that'll be up later this week.
Yeah, the Battery, it's not a new identity for them. I do like their new branding. I think it's great. I think they really nailed what they did. New stadium looks really good, the visuals that we've seen so far. Ultimately, I think they had to do it. I mean, you hate to leave a soccer-specific stadium that was built for them and was a great place for them to play. But, man, there were just more and more issues with everything, and with ownership changes. It didn't make sense. And they weren't drawing. They weren't drawing out there. So maybe being in a different location, they will be a team that can draw a little bit more, be among the top teams in the USL Championship. And I think that for the Battery, it's shown the growth of the USL Championship, because they were one of the big dogs in the league for a long, long time. Well, now that bar has gotten much, much higher in terms of being a top team in this division. Louisville, Indy, Phoenix, you're seeing bigger markets, you're seeing increased spending, you're seeing bigger expectations. And now Charleston is kind of looking to a new way of doing it to hit that level, because they have championship expectations every year, and it's not easy in the Eastern Conference. So this will be a good test with two teams, I think, on Sunday that have something to prove in a big way.
No doubt. Charleston made the playoffs last year. They were the 9 seed in the East, won their 8-9 matchup, but it would eventually lose to Nashville in the round of 8. 3-1 in the 2-9 matchup in the Eastern Conference. So obviously looking to get a deeper run in the East than they did last year.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun USL Championship season. There's just so much going on right now, with CONCACAF kicking back off next week, with home opener for Atlanta United on Saturday, with the Twos home opener on Sunday, with SheBelieves Cup tonight on the women's side. It is non-stop at the moment.
Head on a swivel. That's the best way to do it. And in my case, it's the last button on the remote.
Yes.
Boom, 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 boom. Make sure that everything is there.
You and that last button. Go ahead.
Hey, we're friends, man. One game's up on the computer in the office, and something else is going on with the last button with the big TV in Office HD. That's just how it goes. Did you see the news out of High Point, Greensboro High Point, North Carolina?
I saw that there could be news.
Could be news, yes. Out of HPEnews.com, High Point's efforts to get professional soccer. Looks like it's a 2:00 announcement this afternoon where Mayor Jay Wagner, quote, will make an exciting announcement regarding soccer in the Triad, and it looks like Forward High Point's been in talks with League One, so it looks like there could be something going on at 2:00 at the place called the Catalyst Club, according to a news release.
League One's only going to continue to grow, and that's another great addition, another great one in the southern region, another good rival for teams that are already existing. So you've got that happening today. Reggie Cannon has been signed to a new 4-year contract with FC Dallas. I think still ultimately his pathway will lead him to Europe, but this secures the future for Dallas, and this is something we're seeing more and more MLS teams do, and it's a very important element of this. Sign guys to new deals, reward them for what they've done, lock up their contracts for multiple years, and then that makes it easier when the time comes to make a sale because it's on your timeline now. If the right offer comes in this summer, you do it. If it comes in at the end of the year, you do it. You don't have to rush. You don't have to do it too early. But you're also going to give a player who has performed really, really well for you more money in the short term and not keep them from going to Europe. That's the key. Is Reggie Cannon's going to get an offer, and he's going to go to Europe, I think, sooner rather than later because I believe he's one of the best right backs in the country. But to do this deal, you keep control if you're FC Dallas. And Dallas has lost guys before they signed him out of the academy. A player like Weston McKennie, guys that, we've seen it across the league where you play out a contract, you leave on a free, the club gets nothing. This is important. So good signing from FC Dallas. We've also seen some other deals around the league. Russell Canals signed to an extension in D.C. Steven Birnbaum signed to an extension in D.C. Business is picking up. Some of this is down to the CBA being done, increased space to work with in terms of your salary cap. Now you know how all the allocation money is going to function, all that. But smart moves being made around the league. There are still some guys who are out of contract. We talked about that earlier with Quincy Amarikwa. He could be a player that Atlanta United's looking at. You could also be looking at players that are under contract around the league. It's going to be interesting over the next few weeks as Atlanta United navigates 5 games in 15 days, 2 of them against Club America in a quarterfinal of the CONCACAF Champions League, 2 league home matches, a trip to Chicago and their home opener that's going to see a huge crowd at Soldier Field. You've got a lot of stuff coming up. And you're going to have to figure out how to do it without Joseph Martinez. And you're going to have to explore external options, but also internal options with Adam John, with Pity Martinez, with other solutions. It's going to be a wild, wild time here in soccer in Atlanta. And we'll be giving you as much content as we possibly can. Go ahead and put down on your calendar, if you haven't already, time to come out and join us tomorrow at the Brewhouse Cafe. It's 7 o'clock. It is the run-up. It is John and Kelly Francis hosting the show, getting you ready for Atlanta and Cincinnati and the home opener on Saturday. So that's tomorrow night at 7. You'll have a chance to win 2 tickets to Saturday's match as well if you're with us at the Brewhouse. So come out and try to win some tickets. Come out and have a drink. Sample the outstanding new menu. I like when they have specials because that's my favorite part of it. Great specials on a daily basis at the Brewhouse. Follow them on all their social media so you know what's coming up. We'll see you all there tomorrow night. We'll have a show tomorrow morning as well where we will talk MLS fantasy. We will talk about the weekend in MLS as a whole, and we will also preview Atlanta and Cincinnati Saturday night from the Bins. We will also give you any updates that happened today with Atlanta United 2 with Charleston as you get ready for that match Sunday in Kennesaw. All the stuff, all the content on SDH. We got more coming, but for now, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.